Yes.
Oh, this
Postscript piece, yeah.
this is from a artistic. Speaking of creativity and what is art, this is an artistic masterpiece from my one of my three.
That point is going to be so crucial for people moving forward, isn't it? Right. And I was
because I just couldn't find one size fits all or one solution. I think it's impossible.
yes.
Here's the
And
thing though, like I'm in the room with people struggling all the time to do the right thing, and like how do you live your values when there's all of these tensions and competing motivations? I mean, this.
No, let's just start. We're having a chat, the sector debrief, we thought we call it. A chance to debrief the sector, don't we? Ali, do you want to introduce yourself so everyone can know who you are?
um, this is the question that I'm like, I wish I just skipped this question and people couldn't just like check my profile or something. But okay. I think I will go back to the start and I will try to be short. um, I started in the sector as a volunteer. I had several years joining local organization voluntary teams. I had no clue people get paid for that. And then one day I was in one organization and they wanted to pay for the things that I was doing, and I was like, huh? So I took my first role with WHO, and then after that I spent several years as a national staff, local staff, mainly doing mental health, psychosocial support, protection. Then after that, I started going into international roles. I had around 13 deployments in Asia, Middle East, Africa. And then I felt like I want to do something a bit different. I want to focus at global level and try to make a change. So I stepped into headquarter roles. And from there, my story took a different direction. So I started working mainly on governance, policies, and I like this engineering part of the process, like looking at a process or a policy or a tool and try to make it simple or easy to use, or um, trying to make change from that side. And yeah, I like so much writing, reflecting, thinking, drinking coffee, and speaking with other people who has similar mindset. That's who I am.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Ali. Kim, who are you?
Who am I? I am Kim. I'm sitting in my basement with my dog in Washington, D.C. Where did I start? So I always kind of knew that I wanted to work in international development, although I don't know that I knew what that meant at the time. In 2009, myself and my husband went and we worked with a program in Namibia, and um, and realized very quickly that I wasn't any use to anybody. I was kind of like following people around. I didn't speak the language. I think they appreciated that someone from the US was there, but I wasn't really adding anything. And so I kind of changed my role to sit in the office and build databases and spreadsheets because I was like, that's what is a good use of my skill set, even though it's not as fun or interesting. And I think that's when I realized that like the back office that I belonged in the kind of the back office operations bit, that's where I could use my kind of superpowers to help. And so I've been with Humentum for over 10 years doing all of the things, doing operations, doing membership, doing events, doing learning and design, doing training. And I've kind of like found this nexus where I've been kind of discovering how do you find out what your superpower is and then use it for good. And it's kind of been this sweet spot in this not great year of realizing holding space, learning and design, systems thinking, knowledge harvesting to help people make sense of this moment. So that's kind of that's who I am, I guess, and what I do.
Excellent.
What about you?
Me. I'm Thomas. I'm sat in a wood cabin in rural Somerset, UK at the moment. But I only moved back to the UK a year ago. I spent prior to that 14 years living abroad. East Africa primarily. And I started my career as a photographer. See the cameras in the back there somewhere. Yeah.
Nice.
Um, and that was out of a desire to see the world and to tell the stories of the world for the people back home here, Somerset. And I very quickly had a tension with the journalistic principle of bearing witness and only bearing witness. And I was like, if I'm here, I might as well do something other than just take a photo as well. And so I started moving into NGOs, into operations, volunteering from the UK, rapid onset, first phase response, natural disasters, conflicts, all the rest of it, and then moved to South Sudan. And I was living that caricatured, quintessential white European international aid worker life in remote rural South Sudan. And was there when the Civil War broke out in 2013. Ran the cross-line operations for the big INGO, set up some of the POC sites in UN bases and all the unprecedentedness of that, and then moved to Nairobi because I was burnt out. I just wasn't serving anybody any good in South Sudan any longer, and had to go through therapy and counselling and all the rest of it. I'm not afraid to say that. And then yeah, worked in Nairobi for Save the Children until last year, and it was that journey that kind of told me it was time to get out, because the model of aid that big INGO white international staff are going in and overseeing responses all over the world, it just was for a bygone era. We'd moved on, the world had changed, right? And it was in that journey, and it was in the pivoting of the role that I held and trying to change the way that the organization was manifesting and identifying with humanitarianism that led me into leadership development, organizational development, coaching, mentoring, which is where I am now. And the exploration of critique of the sector and a discovery of the what next is where I met you two wonderful people. Through the Pledge for Change, and yeah, we've started talking and we've enjoyed it, and we've had more conversations and we enjoyed those. And Ali, you had the idea of maybe other people might want to listen to it, so we said we'd record it and see what people think. So here we are today.
I think, I think the thing about the podcasts in the sector, that you feel like they are so polished, like you feel like they are statements, and you get the sense that those people are really smart and it's like a lecture. And I am sometimes like, I want to know the person behind that.
Yeah.
So when we started our conversations, I was like, that's interesting. I would like to hear to some people talking about these things. And the thing is that, what I noticed since the beginning of this year is that people, they show strength, which is nice. It's good. I like that. But I also want some kind of vulnerability. I want to know that, I am like, there are other people feeling the same, that, maybe confused, maybe sad, maybe frustrated, maybe angry, maybe. And then in our conversations and in all the working groups and discussions with Kim also, I was like, those are really interesting conversations. They are so human, and we are being able to express ourselves and all that. So I like that we are actually making it happen.
No, though. I don't know. I think what people need right now is the vulnerability and the realness. I think people are sick of the talking points. And I don't just mean in webinars and things like that. I mean in the even outside of our sector. People are, this isn't working. The system isn't working. Again, not just the development humanitarian sector. And people want realness. And I think we were all discussing, we've all been on many webinar panels in our lives. And I always find that the prep calls are the most interesting because you get a bunch of interesting people around, you throw a question out, and everyone's debating things. And then for whatever reason, you get into a formal webinar setting and things become stilted and formal, and no one wants to kind of talk over each other. And Thomas, you were saying it's the same in the debrief call. And then everything gets kind of, I don't know, flat. And then after the debrief call, it starts again. And so we were like, let's do the bookend. Let's skip the middle part and have the conversation. And see what happens. I don't know. I think that is what people are looking for. We don't have any answers. I mean, in all three of our describing ourselves, I hear tension. we are very open to wrestling with tension and not knowing what the answer is. And I think anyone in this day and age that pretends they know the answer is, I don't know that I trust them.
Well, I think that's the mistake off the bat, isn't it? That people are looking for a solution, and the complexity of the world means, by definition, there is no single solution. So we got to stop looking for the answer, right? Um, but it's wrapped up in all of that is also identity struggles of who we are, right? Because I think by people, particularly in this sector, coming together, we're quite value driven individuals, and for decades, people with the value set and the desires to enact the values of humanity that I think we clearly all demonstrate and others have had a clear entry point of multilateral system to co where you exercise that, right? And now that's crumbling away. And even people still in that sector, I'm coaching a few people in the sector still whose jobs are not at risk. They're going, I don't know if this is where I can have impact any longer.
Yeah.
And they're asking where I can go next. And that's the tension, that's the lived struggles that people are going through. And I
And
want
the
to,
grief and the disillusionment of all of that is
yeah,
so real because it's like I gave my life to this and now all of a sudden like the bottoms. But then on the other side, I'm hearing from people that are like, no, this we've always known this. This is not new. We don't feel grief. We feel excited.
right, right. And it's that space of creativity in the newness, which is where the answers are going to come next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think what I find super interesting that people reacted in different ways, especially this year with the funding cut and what happened with USAID and all the different things. But I really appreciate the people who, spoke up, were open about what they were facing, and also reflected. Like, if I want to put in one single word, one of the most powerful moments or tools or techniques that I notice people using this year is reflection. Because I could see how things would take totally different direction after they pause and think.
Yeah. And it's one of the biggest fascinating learning journeys for me this year, having been working outside and inside the sector still, is that those leadership struggles happen across the sector. It doesn't matter. The subject matter changes, but the manifestation of the leadership challenge is the same. And it's a almost a refusal or a lack of awareness to stop, pause, and reflect. It's no, we've got to keep busy. The answer is in busyness. The answer is in finding a solution and working your way methodically towards that, because that's the reductionist process that's got us to where we are today. But that's, as you say, Ali, you've got to slow down, stop, pause, reflect, and give that cognitive part of your brain the space to think and not be driven by that survivalist mentality that's triggered by the lizard brain part, right?
It sounds easy, but I will say it is a hard switch.
Of
I
course.
mean, as I said, like I've worn the project manager hat, I've worn the trainer hat, I've worn all these different hats. And this year of all the years, it's realizing that you cannot divorce the personal and the system and the process. And I mean, when you say it out loud, of course not. We know all the different models and all of the different things, but in reality, you cannot do it. And I've held space where I've gotten called out for, hey, we didn't do a pulse check, we didn't do a grounding to begin with. And what I'm taking away from that is people need to be seen first as humans before we dive in, because I'm so used to, when you're training a technical topic, you dive right into the technical topic because that's why people are there. It is a professional setting. But when you're talking about systems change and navigating these types of things, you cannot just dive right in. You have to really start with the person, as we just did, because everyone's bringing their true selves to it.
It's fascinating.
I,
I
I
did a sorry, Ali, go on. You go.
No, I just wanted to mention one thing about system change. One of the things that changed my perspective looking and thinking about systems is the moment I started looking at systems as people, and the moment I started looking at transformation as a human.
Mm.
Because then I realized that if system is people, then people could change, and system could change, then we could do that. And the moment we come to the conclusion that all our problems, they are human-made problems, then they could be also solved by a human. So I think when for example, those are one of the things that made me think about systems in a totally different way. So I started chasing the human element in decisions and in thinking and in processes and all that. And the more like me and my team and the people I was working with, we started looking at systems from the people and the human perspective, we were able to achieve more and make that change.
And Kim, you and I have spoken back and forth about this a little bit, right? There's a natural sort of question people are asking as we're discussing what's next. It's what kind of leaders do we need next? And to this point about humans and people being people, that question, it can trigger a defensive response by the current incumbent leaders, because by asking that question, they're thinking, well, does that mean I'm not the right leader because I've been the leader to date? And so I think there's a subtle nuance shift that can take place there between what's the future leaders versus what's the future leadership, because leadership mindsets and mentalities and attitudes and behaviors have occupied a certain manifestation for the last few decades. And the next era is going to need a certain leadership approach and style. And if the individual incumbents can pivot and shift and recognize that through reflective processes, maybe a bit of external coaching support or other areas to help them sort of process those thoughts, then they are the right leaders to have in place, right?
Yeah, no, Thomas, you wrote a whole thing out. You kind of laid that out for me, and it was actually a big aha moment for me because I had been saying like the leaders, the leaders, the leaders, they're not the leaders that we need right now. But you're right, it is a significant mind shift to say, okay, no, it's actually the behaviors, because what that means is some of the leaders are going to be able to make the transition. They're going to be able to adapt, maybe they already have those skills. They just didn't know that they could bring their true selves to the workplace. And some of them aren't going to be able to. And that's okay too. But I think putting it in the behaviors, because then you move away from, yes, the defense to the kind of like discovery mode of, oh, what are the behaviors? Like, we don't need hero leadership where everyone knows everything, because no one knows anything right now. And we need to be able to be really self-aware and be able to self-regulate and co-regulate those around us, because no one is okay right now. So like, what are the things that we need? I think that's going to be a
Yeah,
big conversation in 2026.
yeah.
Yeah.
I the first thing comes to my mind is now after this I will start thinking about what does leadership means because we use this word so much.
Yeah.
But I think one one of the um one of the things that I noticed in the sector we misunderstood so much is leadership. Because in a way or another, and I'm not sure why, but we linked leadership to structure. So we follow someone orders or decisions or tasks because maybe they are higher in the structure, maybe because they have a title in, I don't know, HQ or the region or senior management or XYZ. But from my personal experience, um, the leaders that for me define the meaning of leadership are those who I met, they don't even have titles.
Hmm.
We followed them, we trusted them, we followed their direction because we had that human connection with them, because we trusted them, because we felt they care about each other and they care about the cause and all that. So they didn't even have titles. So I think when we speak about leadership, of course, it's in a way or another, of course, it's also linked to the governance and the structure and all that. But to be honest, those who stayed when funding disappeared or when organizations left or when they lost titles, they were leaders because they cared about each other and the community and the cause.
And I think that's a really important point, that sense that leaders care. and I do think there's a lot of the critique that's been bounded about for years now of the sector, particularly in the sort of localization-based conversations, I think leaves a taste that decisions were made historically with malintent. And I don't think there ever was decisions taken by leaders with malintent. Consequences have led a pathway that now we need to maybe course correct, and circumstances have now given an opportunity for that. Um, but I think leaders need to feel that they've done a good thing in the past,
Here's the
right?
thing though, like I'm in the room with people struggling all the time to do the right thing. And like how do you live your values when there's all of these tensions and competing motivations? I mean, the structure of the incentives are competing motivations. And that's just that we've known that for decades, right? But I think like what you wrote in your piece, Ali, which I think really resonated, is yeah, everyone who I meet has the best of intentions, and that's not nothing. Like it's easy to be like, well, intentions and and impact 100% is not enough, but it's not nothing. And I think if we can kind of use that, I don't know what to do with it, I guess is my point, because next year there's going to be a lot of people who are tireder than this year. They're only going to get more tired, and they still have the good intent. They still want to do good, but they're questioning themselves, which is really good. But how do we kind of like harness that? How do you use that and give people direction? And I know that like you kind of reflected on that, Ali, like that you're seeing it, and maybe we just need to do better at like seeing the small things.
Yeah, that's I think these things when I think about them, they are linked to so many stories and so many people I met and places and organizations and all that. But to be honest, I think that's part of the things that I'm trying to do and both of you are trying to do and those who are with us in the same boat trying to do. I think trying to empower those leaders or individuals within this system because I just couldn't find one size fits all or one solution. I think it's impossible. And to be honest and totally transparent, even in my own journey within this sector, I made tons of mistakes,
Of course.
so many. And to be honest, I learned with those mistakes more than the things that I did in a good way. So I think in a way or another, it's just about, when we are having a challenge or failing or there is a mistake or something like that, to have that time to reflect and think and then um, think about the direction from there. There was this one of my ex-colleagues, he's a senior manager in a country operation, and I was speaking with him the other day, and he was telling me about all the things that he has to deal with, the emergency situation, funding cut, he has to terminate contracts, close some offices, and some donors pressuring for something, and all that. And we were talking about what's the success formula. Like, is there like some kind of like formula or something? And then we came with something like challenges or pain plus reflection equals success. Something like that. Like, you go through a challenge, you sit, you reflect, you think, and then you proceed from there. But to be honest, aside from that, I mean, we are going to make mistakes and we have to empower those people who are trying to learn and continue on this.
You know what's hard
And I
about
think
that, and I think I found it this year, is in trying to do that. I think you're right, Ali, is that it requires you to be kind of open all the time, which is a lot. Like it's really easy to kind of like follow the process. I know what I'm doing. Like I'm a professional, but to always be open and questioning yourself in a good way takes a lot.
It does.
It's a muscle.
It takes a lot of mental exertion, but it takes a grappling and a comfort with discomfort.
Yes.
Those are not easy thoughts to have, right? And that's where I think we then get scared, right? And there's psychodynamic theory about this, right? You meet a problem and you have an instinctive judgment around that. And that's what and I say we from a westernized point of view, but a we that has cultivated an industry-based culture piece there. We've rewarded experience and judgment, and now and with seniority, haven't we? Right, and so we've promoted people into positions because we've said we like the way you solve problems. Your judgment is something we will invest in.
Yeah.
But then when you ask people to then kind of look beyond that initial reaction to a problem and to start critiquing, suddenly they're entering a space where this is not what I've been successful with in the past. Right. And so it gets difficult. And there's a pressure to always, the interconnectivity of the world and the tempo of life these days means you can't necessarily, or it's harder, shall I say, not impossible, it's harder to cultivate that carve out that space to think. And so you've got to have immediate responses. And that's when you get into that difficult space and you have that time to reflect, sometimes you realize it's not actually our problem to solve.
Mm.
And then you get into questions of relevance and identity and
Oh gosh, existential.
let's just go back to what I've done before, which is identify a problem,
Default, risk
about
default.
it, and
Wait,
create.
so add that to the list of leadership behaviors we need. I love that. Discomfort, comfort with discomfort. Add that to the list. We'll keep a running list.
Yeah. So I speak about all those things all the time with my friends, and now my friends, they want to take me to some kind of workshop just to color things. They said, Eddie, we need to stop all those conversations about system, economy, all that. Can we just sit and color stuff?
We just have fun.
Yeah. Anyway, but I want to say something here. It's kind of like one of the strategic things that I do and I've been practicing for several years right now. Um, in my journey, the first time I started sharing and speaking up and talking about my vulnerability, the time I was national staff, the time I started going in deployments and all that, I realized that the moment you start taking control of the narrative is exactly the moment you are not really that vulnerable anymore.
Mm.
So I felt there is this, I don't know what to call it, but it's like this strategic invulnerability.
Mm.
So I could talk about a story when I was bullied, another story when biased or discriminated or struggled with this and all that. And I feel so emotional and I feel really sad when I'm doing that. But then when I do it 10 times, I feel like, I'm actually proud that I survived this and I built from this. So I'm not sure if this is like a mechanism or tool or something people use, but I noticed that when you take control of the narrative, it loses it doesn't harm you that much. Like of course you carry it with you, but you don't feel the same vulnerability as the first time.
Is it also because in doing it, you're creating the frame and you're creating the container of like where the boundaries are and where the guardrails are. And if you're choosing the right safe space, hopefully their reaction is a positive one. So that's healing in and of itself. I don't know.
Yeah, I think also, the first time, I think it was 2 years ago, I shared a personal story I have never mentioned before in my life. And I exposed myself. I felt so bad at that time. I felt tired for a full week. I felt like my emotions went out and public. But the way people started supporting me and
Mm.
showing solidarity, and I was like, our sector is about solidarity.
It really is.
I just felt stronger.
Yeah. Ali, we've mentioned this podcast. We've mentioned a blog that you wrote recently, and we can link it here.
Yeah.
And that's a demonstration of vulnerability. You've been incredibly raw with that. How did you feel clicking post or send when you released that? And how have you felt since?
That's a very good question. Um, I reflect a lot. That's one of the things that I do frequently, and I write so much. And it's been so many years. I write things, but I don't post them online. And I also record videos, and I don't post them online. I consider them like for me, and I visit them at some point in my life or something like that. But I think with this, what I posted, I had this moment where I felt that I want maybe to inspire someone, or maybe to tell someone that I feel you, I see you, I went through the same, and it's a tough journey. Um, and also because, to be honest, when I started in the sector, I was looking so much online to try some people who are like me and did things that I wanted to do, but unfortunately I couldn't find. So I felt like I need to start giving some kind of like example or something like that. So I wrote that piece for myself. The initial plan wasn't to share it and publish it. But then I was like, maybe it will inspire someone. Maybe it will talk about the impact of the pledge without going into indicators and all that. Because for me, it's so personal. So when I posted this online, after 10 minutes, I was like, oh, maybe I should remove it. Yeah, I was about to remove it. And then I opened the details, like this view, and I saw already 20 people read it. Because, many people, they read, but they don't react. And I was like, maybe let me wait a bit. So what I did, I went for a walk, and then I opened my laptop to check what's happening there. Did people say anything? And I started seeing the comments. And then I was like, that's interesting. Because my initial reaction was, oh, I'm exposing so much. And most probably after this, I might not get opportunities because now I'm challenging the sector and flagging all those different red flags and all that. And I was like, oh, maybe it will also affect my future. Maybe I said something there. And, because what you put online, it stays online. So I was like, oh, maybe I should remove it. So I was hesitant. But then when I started seeing people comments and so many people wrote to me and wanted to have a conversation and all that, um, I feel that I keep forgetting that I am a part of a community, and I am not alone in this. And I am just one story among so many others. And like I remember I have a friend once asked me about a book I'm writing, and it's been several years, and said, like, can you describe it in one sentence, something like that? And I said, I'm just an ordinary person, lived extraordinary life. I am like everyone else, but the circumstances were really tough. So when I started seeing the people solidarity, I felt like I should keep reminding myself that I am part of larger community that wants to make that change, and part of that community is supporting each other. And I have to admit, I do feel vulnerable from time to time because I do expose myself. But I came to the conclusion that when you are advocating for a change like that and you're putting yourself out there, part of the journey is to share your vulnerability and to tell your story. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, it strikes me that your experience of recording or writing, whichever feels right in the moment for you, whether it's released or not, is one of your ways of reflecting, processing, giving yourself that moment to pause, reflect, carving that time and that space out. And sometimes you choose to post and sometimes you don't, and that's your prerogative. Sometimes you reread them, which is interesting, and sometimes you
Yes.
don't, right? But that's just a really helpful tool, maybe, and maybe that's something we can offer listeners is to do a similar type of thing. Kim, have you got a way of co-regulating yourself? What do you do when things get too much?
So how let me think about the co-regulating piece. But as you were saying it, I was thinking, well, how do I do the reflecting? Because I wish I could say that I journal and I aspire to, but I don't. But I think it's the work that I do kind of takes care of it for me, because as a facilitator, really the way that I see it is I'm holding space for others. And by holding space for others, you're doing, in some ways, you get to be the one that holds the pen at the flip chart, right? So you're the one that's like creating the container, holding the frame, building the narrative, right? And there's a lot of control and power in that. I think those who teach like to teach for a reason because we like control. But it also requires you to do a lot of listening and kind of connecting of the dots. And what I do is, as I am, especially in a virtual environment, as I'm holding space for people, I process by taking notes as I go. So I have a Word doc up and I'm taking notes as people are talking. And that allows me to build connections and do the reflection in real time. And I think that helps me. It almost always leaves me feeling more hopeful than not, even when the topic is heavy. Because I think, like, to all what we've all been saying is people are looking for community, they're looking for connection, they're looking for agency when they feel overwhelmed and helpless, and they're looking to feel seen. And every time you pull people together and have real, not, not surface level, not small talk conversations, you get that. And I think for me, that's where you get the reflection. That's where you get the sense making.
Yeah.
And I guess that does regulate me.
Yeah.
What about you? What works for you?
Let me respond to you for a minute and then mention my bit. There's something you said there though about that facilitator role and
Yeah.
holding space, right? And you're talking about it in a sort of fairly commonplace environment situation that most people will connect with in terms of there's a flip chart and someone at the front and there's a group of people who are being structured through a conversation. But Ali, you're the way you've been sharing posts and things is another way of facilitation. It's a bit
Hmm.
more of an abstract way, but you're facilitating people in their own reflective processes. And both of you, in one way or another, are holding containers for people's
Mhm.
emotions, right? And inviting them to come and engage with that at a pace that's appropriate and relevant for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something we need to call out and encourage more to happen because it's
Well, and you
not
do
a
that with
natural
leadership
behavior.
coaching, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I try to. Yeah. And back to what we were saying at the beginning of this call about leadership behaviors. I think that type of sort of emotional container space doesn't come naturally if we're living a very managerialist workplace environment, right? Um, and so part of these future leadership pieces is allowing that emotional container. There's a beautiful French word, reverie, where you take the emotion and then you kind of return it in a way that's constructive and helpful for individuals to process and be able to move forward on, which is fantastic. Um, you asked how I do it. I do it largely by this space behind me, actually. I step away. I've got a book here called Craftfulness, um, which is essentially how crafting, making stuff, which is what I like to do behind me, is as a form of mindfulness. And it's that opportunity to step away. I got reminded of it a couple of months ago. I was in a bit of a low point, and I felt that the instinctive way out of it was to sit here in this chair, and the answers were going to be here in this little black box in front of me, right? And I'd start earlier, and I was finishing later, and it just and the more I did it, the sort of more spiraling took place, and I was like, this isn't working. This is not where the answers are. And so I very intentionally just stopped and I spent a couple of hours each morning just behind me there making stuff or fixing stuff or make and that slowly starts to help sort of bring my mind back into a healthy, creative, curious place. And I can then the mind wanders, particularly if you're doing monotonous tasks, right? The mind then goes into other things and you remember and you reflect. And so that's how I tend to like to.
I love that. I got into
That's
watercolor
really
this year. I'm not the most creative human, but so I'm learning how to let the mind wander. I got into watercolor this year, and there's these people on the internet that will do like 5 minute and you like follow them. And my kids are like, you're just following the instructions. I'm like, yeah, but that's my version of creativity and it helps. Let me do me.
Well, Ali, you talked about coloring books, right?
Yeah.
It's the same,
yeah.
right? During COVID, weren't they one of the things that sold out the most, adult coloring books? Um, you talk about wandering. Another thing I do is I like getting outside. On Monday, I'm going on a wandering wander, which I loved.
What does that mean?
I've got wandering
Uh,
wander, one with an A, one with an O. I'm meeting someone and we're going to go for a walk. We're going to wander
Ah,
and we're going to wander.
Ah, that's interesting.
A wandering wonder. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's really interesting. You know, there's this thing I sometimes do. So before joining the sector and later on, I used to take photos so much.
Nice.
I don't like to call myself photographer, but I love photography. So what I do is that I sit and imagine certain photos, like like a person drinking coffee, a candle next to a window, a tree next to water, etc. And then I take my camera and just walk around on the streets, trying to find that picture
Yeah.
and take it. Sometimes it takes like full day. Other times it takes the full weekend. Other times 2 hours. But I found it super interesting because I could imagine something and then try to find where I could find it.
Well, it probably
But
helps you to
I think,
focus, right?
huh?
Like it probably helps you to see the world in different ways.
Yeah, and I love observation. But I noticed something that, to be honest, I think the majority of the leaders that I know who were really good leaders, they had a thing, maybe
Hmm.
writing, maybe connecting with people, maybe coloring, maybe music, maybe photography. That's really interesting.
Creativity. People mistake
Creativity.
creativity with artistic, and certainly I think you need creativity to be artistic, but I don't think you need to be artistic to be creative, right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think it should be, I have one friend and she is super smart, talented leader. She likes to play Zelda. So it's a video game, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
her way of, exploring and doing and
Yeah.
solving issues.
There you
Yeah.
go. I don't know how long we've been talking now. It's got to be 40 minutes or so, 40 minutes. Um, what are your reflections on this conversation?
I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
themes
yeah,
that
like,
are coming up that we've had in our kind of just the three of us conversations before. And I think that there's a whole lot of themes that are going to keep coming up next year that we can probably unpack and we'll have to, I mean, leadership,
Yeah.
tensions, the intersection of personal and system. These are all things that are keep coming up and they keep coming up for a reason. So I think it was like a lovely little overview of the year, maybe without us intending or planning it. I don't know. What do you all think?
I agree. Ali, what do you think?
the same. I like those conversations. So I like it like this, we don't have specific topic. We just go with the flow and we share things from each other's side and maybe stories from other. I think for me that's really good. That's perfect. And there is no need to have a goal. And I like that until now we didn't really come with a name for this, but I like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what we've spent a lot of time talking about in terms of how we've owned each individually sort of co-regulated and had our own thoughts and practiced reflective behaviors. Um, that point is going to be so crucial for people moving forward, isn't it? Right. And I was talking to someone yesterday about kind of, have I had a chat with a mutual colleague recently, and I was like, no, I haven't, and I've consciously left them alone because the arc of the year was starting tired because everyone starts every year fatigued, right? That myth that January 1st is full of vitality and refreshed renewal and stuff, right? It's like stuff from December's still there. So he started tired, and then executive orders, Donald Trump, USA stuff, and it was just crazy chaos for the first probably half the year, right? If we're honest. And then particularly in the north, they had a bit of a break, and then it's been a bit of a kind of right. Well, what have we got left with? There was a period of let's just kind of okay, we're not going bankrupt tomorrow, but what's the lay of the land? And no one, and certainly this individual hasn't had the opportunity to come up for air yet.
Yeah.
Um, and so I hope, and this is a hope, I hope that people who have had that journey this year are able to take time at the end of the year, a good time, right? Not just the public holidays filled with some annual leave, right? They take 2, 3 weeks solid and come back next year. And that next year is that moment of being able to come up and think. Yeah.
Yeah. do you know there is when I started taking those videos, the main reason was recording messages for the future me.
Nice.
So I would take a video, yeah, and I would talk about something happening in my life. Sometimes maybe leaving a job, other times taking a new job. Sometimes it's just something very bad happened. Other times it's something amazing happened. And I talk to myself, to the future me, that, I don't know, one day you'll see this. And I talk about this experience. And later on, I felt like, oh, I actually find it super interesting and good way to reflect and connect with the past me, because sometimes we just remember nice things about the past or very bad things about the past. So I felt that's a way also, like I'm speaking to myself and I could feel myself again in that moment and all the thoughts. So maybe, maybe that's one of the things that people now could find useful. Write it or video or anything, think about it, and then revisit the game.
No, I love that. Leaving capturing thoughts for your future self. Excellent. Should we leave it there for this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I think it's
guys.
good.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, we have to because we have that logo that we are putting. We should mention where is that came from.
Yes.
Oh, this?
Postscript piece. Yeah.
This is from a artistic, speaking of creativity and what is art, this is an artistic masterpiece from my when my 3-year-old made it. He is now 11, and he made it when he was in preschool. And you guys were looking at it one day and we're like, oh, the modern art. And I'm like, no, he was very insistent that at the time that it was a giraffe, obviously.
Yeah.
But we thought that it kind of fit the year that's in it, right? Kind of colorful and chaotic, and people can make what they will of it.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And I'm gonna back him up. If he wants it to be a giraffe, it's a giraffe. I've got him. I like that. Excellent.
This logo.
Cool. Thank you both. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, till next time.
Till next time.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.